the man who has been leading us through and working with us throughout this conversation is someone who has been involved in the financial sector for many years. He's a director of strategy and business operations at Dalex Finance. His name is Joe Jackson. Joe, you're welcome to Eyewitness News.
Good evening, Marion. It's good to hear from you.
It's good to hear from you. It was just like yesterday when we started talking about it, and you explained to us what the issue of haircut meant and all of that. The haircut has come and gone. The 3 billion is finally here. Is that to mean that our doors have been opened? We can go and get more money and possibly become more reckless?
Marion Sanda, it means the exact opposite. What this means is that once we've taken the money, the behavior that we have to undertake to ensure that this money is spent properly has to kick in. We now have a big stick over our backs, making sure that we do the right thing. So if anything at all, this is the absolutely wrong time to believe that you can get reckless again. This is the time when you get prudent with your money. In any case, you would notice that this has come rather quickly. And we haven't finished all the agreements yet, even some of them domestic. So this is just to say, listen, we know you are in trouble. We know you have 2 to 3 weeks of reserves left, and that is foreign reserves left, and that is dangerous. So take the money whilst we finish off the other agreements. The other agreements will be signed, but we are in an even weaker position to negotiate anything at this moment. And we have to take the conditionalities, however harsh they may seem. In any case, some of us may argue that the conditionalities are good for us and that our reckless behavior has brought us this low. So we need to rein back expenditure, undertake the structural reforms to the economy that is required so that we can get back into shape. Anyway, by the way, the Eurobond market, they may have forgiven us part of our debt, but they haven't forgotten. They haven't forgotten. We will not have access to the European market or the Eurobond market for some time. Definitely not for the rest of the year, and most probably for next year also. They have forgiven, but they have not forgotten. And they still know how, they still remember how we behaved by not paying our debt. Don't forget that the money that was given to us also has pensioners' money in there, has taxpayers' money in there, and they've taken a haircut. They are not about to forget in a hurry.
Okay, the reason I introduced the issue by talking about recklessness is that this will be our 17th time, and it is recklessness that keeps taking us back there. It's almost as if when things get to the lowest of low, we go to the IMF, we get credibility, and then we go back to the old habits. That's why I'm asking the question that now that we have gone to the lowest of low, we've run to IMF with our tail between our legs, and we have been given a huge tap on the back by one of the most credible institutions in the world. We now have the doors of other persons open for us. So we're going to go back on the borrowing spree, and then that's going to lead us back to where we were. You don't think that's going to be the case this time around? Because I'm not sure we can say we've learned our lesson, because the last 16 appearances have taught us that we don't learn from this.
First of all, the program is going to be for a few years. So whatever it is, we're going to behave properly for the next few years. Apart from that, I think that we're so close to disaster this time. So close to total collapse that if we don't learn our lesson from this, I don't think we'll learn our lesson any other time soon. And it is after the dust has settled, it is important that we sit down and ask ourselves, how do we make sure that the governments to come will not be as reckless as this? How do we make sure that we don't borrow and borrow and borrow until we can't pay anymore? How do we make sure this does not happen again?
Now, how do we make sure this does not happen again? There will be measures that are put in place. Some could be legal, some could be political, some could be economic. Do we not have these measures to guide us? And these measures in the past, when we even had a homegrown solution we were working with, things still went south.
Well, we do have some of the measures, but one of the things I believe we should do is that those measures we have can be suspended with a simple majority in parliament. One of the things we should do is to make sure that it requires a supermajority, a two-thirds vote, to overturn some of the limits that we have on our spending and deficits, so that even if, as happened or as we suspect happened recently, even if some members of parliament nicodemously cross carpet, it won't be that simple to overturn a vote that we want, a vote that will protect us, a vote that will keep us from reckless behavior. So I believe that the first thing we must do is to make sure that you can't overturn spending limits that have already been written. The zero finance law with the Bank of Ghana, you can't overturn any of this with a simple majority. If you want to, you need a simple majority. Even if 30 MPs nicodemously cross the carpet, you will still not be able to do it. So then we can be protected.
So that is one way. Government itself, what does it have to do now?
Well, that's a very important way, because government, the rules say if the government does not do the right thing, we can refuse to do business with this government. So that's fine. Let us make sure that the rules cannot be upended easily. If need be, let us write more stringent rules about what happens to ministers if they overspend. We've been in a situation where people were not happy with the public. Ministers, even his own party, were not happy with the Minister of Finance, yet found it almost impossible to pronounce censure on him. Maybe it's time to now consider easier ways to censure a Minister of Finance if we believe he's doing the wrong thing.
The issue of government cutting down on expenditure has been on the table from the day, even before the issue of IMF came up. The government has consistently defended its position. Now that we have this program approved, does it matter what the government does in terms of expenditure cuts?
It does. It still does. Remember, it's not as if the government is going to receive 660 million and say, go and do what you like. That's not what is going to happen. That money is tied. What that money does for us, most important of all, is to shore up our reserves. There still has to be spending cuts. Nothing has changed. And I'm sad that the conversation about spending cuts has been reduced to the issue of getting rid of one or two ministers and the like. That's not it. It's about reducing the whole size of government. It's about cutting ministers, yes. It's about cutting appointees, yes. It is also about cutting the state-owned enterprises that are ineffective, that drain our coffers. It is about reducing the size of government in general, not just a few ministers.
We know that it's 3 billion the government is expecting. We are told it's going to be paid in 3 tranches. That money itself is not a big deal, is it? It just opens the door for us to have some credibility moving forward. But when do we still need to see that money? And what do you think that money is really going to do for us? Because people hold the view that 3 billion, that's really nothing.
3 billion is nothing, but 3 billion will stave off the worst, the doomsday scenario that the Minister of Finance and even the President talked about. What we have is a big brother or a big sister who says, listen, I know you are so broke. I know you have your debtors hanging around you. I'm going to take this money and plug the most dire loopholes and have some reserves whilst we finish up the negotiation and make sure that you have time to breathe and time to pay off your debts. It is not an invitation to treat. It is not an invitation to go on another spending spree. Least of all, it is not an invitation not to rein in your bad habits.
So it's an invitation to say that go back to the table and fix your mess and don't repeat that.
Thank you. You've summarized it beautifully. It says that take this, hold it against the worst of your creditors so that your children can go to school, so that you can have some food on the table. But go and get rid of your side chick. Go and stop eating those fat meals. Go and start eating gobe.
Which we will not
Go
do.
and eat cocoa and kose for breakfast so that you can start paying off your debtors.
Is there any indication we are doing that or we are going to do that?
Well, the days ahead will show. Remember that your big brother who paid the money will be watching you. And if you don't behave, this is only one tranche. The second tranche will come. The third tranche, then you might as well forget it. So you have to behave. And the whole world is looking at you and watching how you behave, knowing that since December, you haven't paid a cedi of your debt.
Joe, should we then expect to tighten our belts even further, or this is the time to loosen our belts and go and hang out tonight and party and say, hooray, IMF, Asikanabo?
Please, the conditionalities are not about to kick in. The belt tightening is now about to properly take effect. So anybody who thinks this is a sign of jubilation, well, it is a sign of jubilation in the sense that the worst won't happen, but you're still going to have to tighten your belt. You're still going to face an employment freeze. You are still going to face the fact that the government is broke. And as not this 660 million or even the total 3 billion does not stop the government from being broke.
Let's leave it here. Thank you for speaking to us, Joe.
Thank you, Mario. It's been a real pleasure. And we all should sleep easier, but we all should realize that the most difficult times are ahead.
Not behind us.
Not behind us.
Then it was not a pleasure speaking to you. Joe, you just came to scare me. But thank you for speaking again.
God is good and He's kind to us as Ghanaians. We lived in a state of grace since March and nothing went wrong. And we've now got a relief. We should be pleased. We should be going to church and thanking the Lord for taking us through April and the best part of May without a disaster.
Joe, I thought it was only finance ministers who quoted Bible and religious verses. You've just joined that bandwagon. Thank you so much. That's Joe. That's Joe Jackson, is Director of Strategy and Business Operations at Delex Finance.